Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Wait, this camera is frozen now.
Which one? 2 or 1?
Camera 2.
2?
Yeah. I'm switching the camera 1.
It's frozen. You sure?
Yeah, just unplug it back in.
I just did that. I can do it again.
No, give it a sec.
Did I plug it back in?
No, it's just like this. I'm going back to the intro page for a sec, actually.
Let's go. Got a half an hour left.
Last week, Michael Rousseau, CEO of Air Canada, came under fire as he gave an English-only speak to a Quebec business audience. Rousseau, who has lived in Quebec for 14 years, followed his speech by saying that he does not have the time to learn French, and that there is an ability not to learn French in Montreal. Many French speakers have taken offense, and even native English speakers have taken offense to this as well. Some members of the National Assembly, including MNA, Ruba Ghazal, and Marwa Rizbi, said that they have faced barriers coming to Quebec, and they've worked very hard to learn French. So how does this add fuel to an already heated language debate in the province? Some have said his comments are dangerous because that they encourage French is threatened in Montreal. So how does this connect to Bill 96, the French language law? This bill intends to change the Canadian Constitution to affirm Quebec as a nation and French as its official language. This bill includes 200 amendments that seek to strengthen French in the province. This bill was first tabled this May. It's an upgraded version to Bill 101, Quebec's French language charter. This was adapted in 1977 by then Premier René Lévesque. Giovanni Bisceglia has been actively mobilizing to denounce Bill 96 and Bill C-32. Bill C-32 is an act to amend the Official Languages Act. It requires federally regulated businesses to recognize their right to work in French, to be served in French, and the right for Francophones not to be discriminated against. Giovanni runs a Facebook group called Our Bilingual Quebec /Canada, No to Bill 96 and C-32. Let's see the promo video he put together.
Canada is in distress. On May 13, 2021, the Canadian province of Quebec tabled Bill 96, an act respecting French, the official and common language of Quebec. What does this mean? In Quebec, agents of the Office québécois de la langue française will be able to search and seizure work environments without search warrants to ensure French is being followed. Bill 96 will negatively impact the English language, will cap the amount of enrollment possible in Quebec's English CEGEPs, will make Canadian federal jurisdiction subject to Quebec's provincial language laws. This bill not only threatens fundamental rights of privacy, but it also threatens to take away the bilingual status of any municipality that does not have a minimum of 50% English speakers. The Canadian government has failed its citizens. It is allowing Quebec to do what it wants again. Saying no to this injustice by saying no to Bill 96 and C-32. Join us on Facebook on Our Bilingual Quebec, Canada. No to Bill 96 and C-32.
I'm pleased to welcome Giovanni Bisceglia to the show. He's a service worker and an activist. Hi Giovanni, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
So let's get into it. Could you tell us a little bit about what stage the law is in right now?
Well, right now there's been a bit of debating, as you can say. There's been Anglophone groups who've been talking about it to Mr. Barrette and other groups as well. But the state is quite grim because it doesn't seem to be really having much of an effect. The concerns of the Anglophone community are being, for lack of a better term, ignored or sidelined completely. So we're basically waiting for the nail in the coffin, essentially. And we need to have people to really be active right now and to start protesting and to start saying why we're against this.
And what are some of the concerns that the English community has with this bill?
There's a few things. Number one, there's this term historic Anglophone being used a lot in the bill. Basically, that means that if you were born in Quebec and you've been going to school all your life in English, you are a historic Anglophone. But it kind of creates two classes of Quebecers, the French type and the English type. And if you are a historic Anglophone, you then have access to English services in the healthcare system in Quebec, which you would not have access if you are, let's say, an American coming to Quebec because you're not a historic Anglophone. So they're really limiting what you can get in terms of health services in English. There's also the fact there's been a lot of racism ever since Bill 96 come out. My wife happens to be Japanese, and she gets told on a regular basis, go back to English Canada. She gets told, go back to China. And this is happening very, very frequently because of this bill. Yes, there's been injustice in the past for French people in the French-speaking language, of course. However, this doesn't justify what's going on right now. And there's a lot of reminiscing, you can tell, of the past, and it's just flooding right now.
Okay. So I do understand that not all Francophones are in support of this bill. From conversations that you've had with Francophones and just the rhetoric you've seen,
Yes.
What type of concerns have you seen from the Francophone population?
Well, basically that their voice is completely drowned by the more nationalist and more extreme people. A lot of Francophones do want to send their kids to English school, and that's going to be severely limited once this bill happens. And that's one big concern. The second concern is that they really are not being heard. All we're hearing is Quebec says, Quebec states, Quebec thinks, but when that term is being used in the media, what is it actually referring to? It's referring to nationalist perspective, as if it talks for the entirety of Quebec, and it really doesn't.
Mm-hmm. So yesterday we had spoken a little bit about this, and you had told me about relating this to linguistic cleansing. Could you tell me a little bit more about this?
Well, basically, the law is structured in such a way that they're not really promoting French. They're just limiting non-French. So instead of saying, for example, we'll put a measure to help people speak French, they're saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And this is just very restrictive. So what is actually happening, it's not that the French language is going to become more and more used. It's that non-French is going to be less and less and less and less used until it goes away altogether. And that seems to be how the bill is really created, how it's being presented.
Okay. And I just kind of want to get back into what you were commenting on before about some of the experiences that your wife has had.
Yes.
Do you think that this bill, where it currently stands, and if it is passed, will lead to further xenophobia and racism in the province?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's not a matter of if it will pass, it's when it will be passed, because all the parties in the provincial government are accepting it and giving a thumbs up on it, as well as the federal government. So it's going to pass for sure. Is it going to make things worse? Absolutely. You were saying just before about the CEO of Air Canada. There's 100 people protesting a few days back just from that one incident. And it's been blasted in French media as being just one more example of how French is either dying or in danger, or who do we think we are, non-Francophones? Oh yes, things are not going to get better for sure.
So, I mean, federally, they don't really have any ability to change this, and municipally, as many people who are watching this right now probably know, the currently recently.
Federally, they actually can change it. The thing is that the Governor General has to sign all bills in order for it to pass. So we have one in Quebec. If they don't sign the papers, the bill doesn't pass. So they choose not to use, that's called the powers of reservation. It's an old law from a few hundred years. It's still active, it can still be used, but the federal government is afraid of using that because if they do so, it will be perceived by the provincial government as being an infringement on the French people. But the law is there, it can be used and it can be applied.
Okay. And you know, municipally, our mayor promotes these language laws. I guess, what do you think of this?
Well, what I think is that the election was really interesting because Balarama Holness was blocked from like 3 or 4 different debates in French. He got really not much exposure with the election. So when we say people voted for Plante, they voted how? They voted without having the understanding of who was actually running for mayor. So I don't really think this election is very legal. I haven't heard much talk of it, but I don't see how that's even democratic. So Plante is in power right now. She'll bring Louise Aguel, which is a very stronghold PQ individual, to valorize French, and things will not be getting better.
You know, both municipally and provincially, are we seeing any parties who are opposing this law and actively mobilizing against it?
No, and that's the problem because right now the Anglophone community and the bilingual population have zero representation municipally, provincially, and federally. So we would need to have another party to be able to represent the opinions of those who are saying, what are you guys doing? English is required for business. We want to be able to move farther in Quebec, not behind. Let's do something about it. And no one is doing that except for Balarama, who did not win, unfortunately.
Okay. And I mean, for Montrealers or Quebecers who are concerned with this law and do want to mobilize it against it, what do you recommend that they do?
There's a few things. Number one, protest. Number two, write to your MPs and MNAs, you know how so they can express how you feel. Next thing is that if anybody wants to start a political party, start it now before it's too late. And number three, there are ways of doing official petitions to the federal government to have them stop using the notwithstanding clause irresponsibly. And that's one of the reasons why this law is going to be so difficult, because it has the backing of the federal notwithstanding clause.
Okay. And you had told me a bit yesterday about how the Bloc Québécois had put a sign in Ottawa that said,
yes,
Quebec knows what's best for Quebec. And
yes,
you know, currently you're raising funds to put a sign in Ottawa to counter this sign stating that Quebec doesn't speak for everyone.
That's
would
right.
you like to talk a little bit about why you're doing this and what is the process to make this happen?
Well, I'm doing this because no one else is. We've got no support, so somebody has to stand up. I need $100,000 to be able to put these signs up in more than one place in Ottawa and Quebec, and Ottawa and Ontario in general. This is one way of getting our voice heard by the federal and the provincial. Of course, the media will pick it up and they'll realize, hey, people have other opinions besides what is being presented by the VQ and the PQ and the CAQ. So I started a GoFundMe account, raised about $500 in 3 days, which is not bad. However, I need $100,000 to keep this going, and also putting that video promo you talked about before and show to your viewers live across Canada, because the rest of Canadians don't know what's going on. They just think this is just another law and Quebec. This is not like other laws. This is great for Bill 101. It's very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that drawing attention in Ottawa and nationally, might create a different outcome?
It could. I can't control what people think and feel. However, at least our voice will be heard. And right now, it seems to be the only way that we can get our opinions out. Those of us who believe that English is required and bilingualism is important for the business community and for the promotion of Quebec in general. French doesn't represent Quebec only. There's other languages like French.
Mm. And aside from these signs and, the Facebook group and promotion you're doing, as we've seen in the ad we played earlier, are there any other forms of promotion and mobilizing that you're taking part in?
Well, right now, my main intervention is to make sure the population is aware in Quebec and outside of Quebec of what's going on. I'm thinking potentially of starting a political movement to eventually run for mayor at some point. I'm not sure if that's going to pan out. I have to see how much support I have, but that's in the works right now. The websites are a platform that I'm using in order to bring attention and then eventually build enough to have a website on starting a mayor race or perhaps a political party.
Thank you. I just want to branch back to something we were discussing a little earlier, in relation to xenophobia, but more specifically, how do you think that newcomers, whether from another province or another country, how will they be affected by this law?
How they're affected? Well, first of all, finding a job in English, good luck. Number two, it puts pressure on them to learn French. And the pressure is coming not just from the law, but from the actual population who are making the racist comments. Go back to Canada, go back to English Canada. So it's very tough for people coming to Quebec right now. If you want to work in English, my suggestion, don't come here. Go to Ontario because you are going to have a heck of a difficult time.
I was actually looking at some numbers this morning, and even in Ontario, there's been a few thousands of Ontarians who've actually left the province over the last few months. Some of them even coming to Quebec. I mean, I guess, do you think we'll see something similar here in Quebec with Quebecers leaving the province either before or
for
after
sure.
this law?
I'm expecting an exodus of a lot of Anglophones, and I would actually expect many Ontarians, Franco-Ontarians, coming to Quebec because it's becoming the Paris of North America. And that's the whole idea of Bill 96, to define Quebec as nationalists see Quebec, to make it literally a French oasis in North America. And it's not a bad idea per se. The problem is how they're going about to do it. And it's very dangerous by just limiting those of us who don't either speak French. I speak 4 languages, speak English, French, Italian, Spanish. I have no issue with languages, but most people don't. And this becomes an issue in Quebec.
Okay. I know that you work within the healthcare system, and this law, it will actually it will affect the healthcare system, and access to English speakers understanding their doctors properly. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So the law basically what's going to end up with the law eventually is that they're defining something called historic Anglophones. If you are a historic Anglophone, meaning you're born in Quebec and you've been going to English school all your life, you will have access to English services in the health system. If you don't, you won't. So essentially, if you're an American coming here, or if you're someone from BC coming here, speak English, you will not have rights in getting English services. In regards to doctors, if you look at the Star, they had an interesting article quoting Bill 96 in particular. The doctor saying this is going way too far because if doctors can't use proper French, they'll be accused of having a derogatory act, which would be equivalent of something like sexual harassment or something very grave, as defined by the College of Physicians right now. So this is not just promoting French. This is actually penalizing people who don't have a mastery of the French language in a very dangerous and even criminal way. It's a criminal act. You can't do that.
So specifically, using this example, as a result, could doctors, be taken to court, lose their jobs?
Most likely lose their license to practice eventually. I'm not sure if they're going to apply the full extent of the law right now when it passes. But there's going to be some very grave tarnish on people's reputations and potentially losing jobs. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure how they're going to go with this. I have to consult, but I would imagine that it will eventually get to that point.
Okay. And this law, it also affects privacy. You were telling me a little bit about how businesses will be affected. Would you be able to expand on that?
Sure. Actually, I sent you part of the article, a screenshot. Essentially, at a hospital, a CLSC, a business, if there is a report on someone who is not using French or only using non-French, the Office Québécois de langue française will actually have the right to go in the computer with confidential information and search as they please, and we have to give them unlimited access. Now imagine you're working at a CLSC or a hospital with confidential files. what happens with that? There's so much room for abuse. I mean, where do you see in a democratic country, anywhere on the planet, laws giving the government the capacity to search without search warrants to see if you're using the proper language? I mean, you only see this in dictatorships. This is very, very dangerous.
And, you know, I know you've already touched on this, but do you think that this law will, you know, I guess, create more nationalism in Quebec and maybe kind of revive the separatist movement?
I don't know about reviving separatism but what I do think is going to happen eventually is that there's going to be a revival of a very strong pride to be Quebecois, which is not bad in itself. What is bad is how it is being done. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if you saw the news a few weeks back, they're talking about how the Quebec government wants to replace religion and morality courses with national pride. I'm not sure if you actually read that, but this is classic indoctrination. I went to Concordia, by the way, and I studied in religion. Cults was my specialty. And this is precisely how cults work. I mean, you indoctrinate at a very young age, and you instill with this pride. And there's nothing wrong with being proud to be Quebecois. I'm proud to be Quebecois. But there's proud to be Quebecois, and then there is indoctrinating you into believing this. And that's a completely different ballgame. So, yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
Building on that, you know, do you think that this could be the start of something more, maybe more harsh language laws that we could see in the future in Quebec?
This is only the beginning. These two, Bill 101, which started the process, Bill 96, building on it, we're going to have a few more of these coming up the next 50 years or so. This is just the beginning. So we have to brace ourselves. And if we don't do something right here, right now, people don't start petitioning, people don't start protesting, this has to go across Canada, United States. People have to know, unless this happens, no, it's game over.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it does seem a little bleak. I guess, do you have any words of positivity, if there are any, in order to keep the opposition going and opposing this law?
So, positive words. It is bleak, but it's not hopeless. If people vote, next year is the vote, 2024 from the goal, vote against them. That's one thing you can do. Start making sure social media presents information across Canada. Go on Facebook, go on Instagram. If you get interviewed by CNN, do it, because we have to make sure what is happening here is known worldwide to put pressure on Quebec. If we can do this, then we can have the same result as the so-called pasta incident a few years ago, where people using the word pasta in a restaurant wasn't acceptable, was supposed to be pot, and it went across the world as being a ridiculous thing. And the FIS basically took it back and said it was a mistake. We have to get that kind of reaction by getting business across the country, across the world, communities across the world, to put pressure on Quebec to say, this is too far. And if we can do this, there's hope. Maybe not that Bill 96 won't pass, but that bilingualism and in Montreal can survive and can be still quite a strong vitality in Quebec.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share?
You know, make this video that I sent spread as much as you can to make sure people are aware of it. Because the biggest problem we have in Quebec and across Canada, people have no clue what's going on. That's why I started a Facebook page. There has to be awareness. And if you can do so, we can start putting pressure and getting better results.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure
It was
to
a
speak
pleasure.
with you. All right, talk
Bye-bye.
soon. Have a good afternoon.
Stay on
Likewise.
camera one, please.
Ready for street?
We are actually not ready for streeters.
Are we still
We
live?
got trouble with that, so should we go on break?
We are experiencing a little technical difficulty, so we will take a short intermission and be right back. Thanks for tuning in. And we're back. Thanks for waiting. I'm joined by Arya Afshar. He's actually our technical producer, but he will be affected by Bill 96. So Arya, you've been here for a little while. I guess, can you tell us how long you've been here? And I mean, I guess your experience living in Montreal, being an Anglophone.
Sure. Hi, I'm going to speak into that camera. So I came here in 2020 in August, so middle of COVID, like kind of, going out and all that stuff. It was not easy to do. But we came here because my partner is going to McGill. She's studying to be a counselor, so she's doing her master's. And when we came in, well, one thing I was like hearing when I was in BC was that, you can get by without knowing French. But as I got here, I realized like that's not really true. Like you do need French. You do need to like have kind of, it's just better to have it. Even if you can get by, yes, technically I can do my shopping, all of that. It's just better to learn the language. But then like the first thing we realized was they told them at McGill, like kind of right off the bat, like if you want to stay in Quebec and if you want to practice in Quebec, you have to pass a French exam. And then later it even turned out that if you did go to McGill, even if you speak French, there's like an extra complication with the whole thing because not all of their courses are like their entire program itself doesn't meet all the prerequisites required. So you may also have to take like additional schooling, even though like the counseling program is really prestigious in McGill. So we kind of like from then on started operating on the presumption that we'll be going back. And overall, like one thing about what Giovanni was saying kind of really resonated with me was that like I don't have an issue with languages either. I'm trilingual and I've settled into countries outside my hometown of Iran and I like integrated and assimilated into their communities, learned their language and all that stuff. But I find the attitude that the government takes, and this is not at all a comment on the people of Quebec, they've been really warm and welcoming and very understanding, but the government seems to have an attitude of like speak French or else, rather than being like, oh, well, here are some programs we have if you want to learn French, like here's some assistance with French. I don't think you can bully people into learning a language. You need to motivate people into learning a language and showing them that it could be beneficial for them. But instead of like positive, incentives, they're going for the like learn French or else attitude. And that just like personally turns me off. I'm like, now I don't want to learn French. I was really looking forward to learning French, but now I'm like,
understandable. I mean, even in Quebec, like when I first moved here, I was looking into, the language classes. I ended up doing it at Concordia for a while, but the government has this program where essentially they'll give you money to do French, but it's full time and it's not really enough to be able to support yourself. So I thought that was a little bit complex because a lot of people come here to work, so they can't really take time off of their full time, part time job, whatever it is, to do a 9 to 3 Quebec French course 5 days a week. I mean, for you to, I guess, feel encouraged enough to embrace the language and kind of fit it in your schedule, would there be some type, like an ideal like setup of being able to learn French that I don't know, you think would be good for the government to offer?
Yeah, like, so I looked into the program, because also when I came in, I was, it was middle of COVID, I was pretty much unemployed, I had some, like, remote work and stuff, so I was looking, so I did have the time to take these classes. So the first thing is I registered for the classes, and I wasn't even given a response for, like, a good 3 weeks. After that, they were like, oh, like our online system doesn't work. You need to go down to the post office and like send your documents by mail. And it's funny because their office is down the street. I can walk there in 15 minutes, but sure, I sent it through the mail. Probably took 3 or 4 days. Then I called to follow up kind of constantly for them to be like, oh, it's not here yet, you're not in our system yet, check back in a week, check back in 2 weeks. So just kind of like something simple like that, just sending them an application form already took a month. They also pay you as of, at the time I checked this, which was September 20, it was something like $180 a month, 180 a week for, yeah, basically going 8:30 to 3 p.m. To these classes. They have a part-time option for which they don't pay you. They don't have a night shift. That could be something, like for people who work, that could be one thing. Yeah, so like, and I think I have a friend who's from Syria. He was getting some government assistance. So the French, so this supplementary income like was working out for him. Then he took like, even though the classes were remote, he took a weekend to go to London, Ontario. That's where when he settled in Canada, he first went there. And they disqualified him from the program based on that.
Because of the relocation?
It wasn't even a relocation, it was a visit. So one day on his remote classes, he just kind of casually, like talking to the teacher, going like, oh yeah, I'm visiting London for the weekend. And they kicked him out of the class based on that.
Wow.
They were like, you can't be paid if you're leaving the province. And he wasn't leaving the province, he was just visiting somebody. It's like I don't know, a couple hours train ride or something to London. So then I started taking the classes after ages that it took for them to set up, and I quickly let it go because it felt, well, I mean, I guess my personal kind of feelings about taking a language class remotely aside, it felt like so much of the time there was spent on not only teaching you the language, that was half the time, and the other half of the time was that kind of, I want to almost say like indoctrinating you into this, like, oh, as the French, we are victims. And you know, like, I got no dog in this fight. Like, I'm not Anglo, I'm not Franco. I'm just kind of seeing what I observed was that it felt a lot like propaganda. It felt a lot like what in school they would tell us about Afghani people, because we had Afghani people come to our country, and they speak the same language as us. So anyway, that whole thing aside, it just felt like that. So after a while, I dropped the classes because I just realized, yeah, these classes aren't going to do much. I can't support myself financially with that. And I'm a non-refugee immigrant, so I wasn't getting any financial assistance from the government. And many people won't. So you can't live off of $180 a month. No way. I mean, my phone bill is $50 a month, right? Sorry, I keep saying $180 a month. It's $180 a week. But yeah, I just realized you can't really do it, and I think it's not very accessible for other people. So I mean, what they can do is allow part-time, have a night shift. I'm pretty sure there will be like French teachers who would be willing to do night classes. They now have some weekend classes, but they're never like available. You always have to be on like a waiting list. So that program kind of has the right intentions, maybe not enough budget, but overall also, yeah, I just feel like the government, you know, they send you documents to sign up for this class, which is supposed to be a French 101 elementary class, and it's entirely in French. So if you don't know any French speakers, which I didn't know as a newcomer, then I had to like do this whole thing, and it's all paper. If like they send me something digital, I'll get that translated. I had to literally type it into Google Translate. So it's just like those little things that makes me frustrated, and I think makes a lot of people frustrated. I think we have a clip, so I don't want to.
No, I just want to come back to something you had just mentioned about, you know, the type of things they were teaching in this language classes. Do you think that, I guess, kind of bridging to Bill 96 and what Giovanni was talking about, do you think that it's kind of enforcing or upholding xenophobia, racism?
Yeah, and like interestingly, because even xenophobia is against people from another country, whereas this seems to be very much like the narrative of like the Anglo community like inside your country. You know, we have this history with them, and the history is there and all of that. I'm not like I don't have enough like historical knowledge to refute what they were saying to us about like the French-British kind of relations in the early days when Canada was being colonized. But it even like, yeah, I didn't even know what to call it, because xenophobia is saying people over there. This is saying like people around you are trying to discriminate against you. We were always discriminated against, all this stuff. And I once was just kind of giggling with my mic on mute, and the teacher kind of, I don't know, I got a stink eye. They didn't confront me. I was actually trying to provoke them because I really wanted to have the debate. But I saw the like stink eye of them going like, don't giggle at our suffering, or I don't know what to call it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And lastly, I just want to ask, you know, does a bill and possibly becoming a law like this, does it make you want to leave Quebec? Will it shorten your time in Quebec?
100%, yeah. I mean, again, with my partner, for me, like, I'm not trying to say like I'm a genius, but if I like put my mind to it, I can learn the language. But my partner, she's doing her classes. She's taking this degree. She wants to like get into earning her work experience, doing all that stuff. So for her, really taking an extra year to like learn a language, even though because they were like, what if we just have completely Anglophone clients? Doesn't matter. You need to. So it seems like, they're kind of forcing our hand, because I otherwise really love Montreal. I think it's a really wonderful place. But yeah, it definitely makes me less motivated to be here. And I also wonder, like, okay, maybe I speak French, maybe I speak a little bit of French. I would still prefer to see my therapist and speak English with them.
Yeah.
I'd still prefer to see my doctors and dentists and speak English with them.
Yeah.
So if that's going to be an issue, like, I'm not going to speak in my third language to my therapist, because my emotions take place in English, if that makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
it totally makes sense. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to share?
No, I mean, yeah, I guess just what Giovanni was saying, and like, yeah, it's you can't like bully people into learning a language. You have to create opportunities. You have to like positive reinforcement, right? Like, it's weird. It feels really offensive to be told like, learn this language or else. So I think that's what I would suggest, and then people would actually learn French. And if this is becoming the Paris of North America, it would be something that would actually attract all sorts of businesses to itself, all sorts of people to itself. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Arya. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. I'm back behind the camera now.
Can you see me? No camera. Should I sit here? Okay. All right. We are going to go on a quick little break, and then we'll come back to some streeters. Video journalist Aude Simon spoke to some Montrealers on the street about what they think about Bill 96. Let's see what they have to say.
Je pense que tous les replis identitaires, dans le sens un repli autour de la langue, un repli autour d'une histoire religieuse, par exemple au Québec catholique, est toujours dangereuse, dans le sens, surtout quand elle est motivée et proposée par le gouvernement, parce que ça fait des sociétés qui sont beaucoup plus fermées. Et donc, dans l'actualité, dans la modernité, dans notre situation à Montréal, par exemple, on a besoin plutôt d'un discours du gouvernement d'ouverture et pas de fermeture. Donc, je crois que le projet de loi, comme la difficulté du gouvernement à reconnaître le racisme systémique, je crois que c'est toujours une limitante pour qu'on puisse vivre en paix à Montréal. Déjà, la Constitution reconnaît le Québec comme une nation. Et je crois que le fait d'avoir une nation bilingue, ça motive une ouverture déjà à la base. Et il faut dire que le Québec aussi, il a la communauté anglophone qui est du début de la colonisation du Canada et du Québec. Donc, je pense que les droits à exister en anglais aussi, il est là. Donc, exister en anglais, exister en français, et pourquoi pas dans une autre langue. Donc, ça veut dire, il y a des provinces où on reconnaît même officieusement, et on reconnaît même les mandarins, on reconnaît les japonais donc, au Canada. Donc, pourquoi pas au Québec? On ne peut pas plutôt ouvrir notre offerte linguistique plutôt que la fermer. Parce que le message qu'on donne, c'est qu'il faut se fermer. Il faut se fermer, se fermer, se fermer. Et je crois que le fait d'utiliser la langue, c'est juste pour des questions politiques. Hein. Un caudal politique, la CAQ, pour moi, c'est un projet politique plutôt qu'un projet de nation en réalité. C'est un projet qui divise et pas qui unifie.
I did hear about, like, if you are like children of immigrants, for example, you have to go to a French-speaking school so you can be bilingual, which I like the idea of that. But if it's reaching the point where now you're kind of like causing that divide between francophones, anglophones, and if they can't speak French, then you don't want them here, I think that's when it gets a bit tricky. Even in France, actually, like they talk about, especially because being from England, I go to France often, so you hear the way people talk, and they say as if like people from French speaking but like Muslim countries, like I don't know, Arab countries or whatever, that come in, they don't like to assimilate, they don't like to, as they think they want their own culture but don't want to be part of the French culture, and they ghettoize themselves and they have particular areas where they stay. But it's also because people don't really let them in. If you're not welcomed, how are you meant to assimilate and blend in? And so they're kind of causing the problems that they're angry about. I actually had an incident recently, it was here actually, where one of my friends got stopped by the police and he wasn't French speaking, and all of a sudden you could see that they had so much like animosity against him and they were starting to be aggressive, and then another friend of ours started speaking French with him, and all of a sudden they just calmed down. They're like, next time, you know, we'll let you off with a warning this time, but next time don't be doing whatever it was. But if there hadn't been that one French speaking friend, I think it could have ended up really different. I feel like they would have been extra horrible to the guy. And I do try and speak French, but also the same thing when I do and someone can tell, I guess it's by my accent or how poorly I speak, that I don't speak French fluently, they'll reply in English, but you can visibly see that they're just not happy with me and they're kind of done with the conversation and want to move on to someone else.
Born and raised in Montreal, and I speak both languages. Je parle français. And specifically for how I think, let's say our provincial government should handle the French-English question. I'm more for limited government. I don't like the imposition of rules on citizens. I think French is a beautiful language, beautiful culture, but I think it really should be up to the people to decide how they want to run their business. If it's a private business, it should be up to them if they want to have a sign in English, Chinese, French, whatever. And just let the market dictate if they're going to be successful or not. For public services like schools and everything else, public works, I do understand the need to preserve culture. It is a French province, so I'm all for that. The one thing that really I guess upsets me is punitive measures. So I don't agree with any form of punitive measures. If people don't speak a certain language, I don't think they should be fined. I don't think they should be singled out. That rubs me the wrong way. I think the way forward is to have a lot of inclusion and to understand people and to understand that they have different points of view, and forcing people down a certain path. I don't see any historical precedents where that's led to prosperity. So that's really my point of view.
Okay, what are your thoughts about Quebec wanting to be a sovereign nation?
Quebec wanting to be a sovereign nation, I might be kind of alone in this, but I'm all for that. I think, again, limited government, when Scotland wanted to break from England, I supported them just because I think limited government, smaller governments is a better thing. So regardless of if it's Quebec, Scotland, I'm all for that. And if the population agrees, let them have a referendum and so be it. I can understand that if you're Anglophone, you might feel attacked in a sense because perhaps you're feeling like you might become a second-class citizen. And then you also just have the logistics of, like, there's the federal government that says Canada is multilingual, or it's bilingual. And then Quebec is saying, okay, that's great, but here it's strictly one language. So I can understand how that clashes. And if you speak primarily English, you might feel like you're going to become a second-class citizen. And again, it comes down to punitive. To say it's only one language and you must speak this language, and if you only speak another one, or if you only serve your customers in strictly English or Chinese or any other language, that we're going to impose some fines on you, I can understand how there's obviously some frustration and some pushback on that. Even though I speak both and my father's Francophone, I can empathize with the Anglophones that feel imposed upon like that. But at the same time, I also understand the historical precedents of how the English treated the French for the previous century and the century before that. So it's hard to, reconcile and try to find something that works for both. But again, I just think that having a positive outlook is the right approach, because just imposing punitive measures just never leads to a good outcome. So I don't think that there should be strictly a single language or imposition of that. If that's the law of the land, then there needs to be a separation of church and state. If you want to change that, sure, get a vote, change it. But if currently that is the law of the land, then public institutions should obey that, regardless of my own personal, predispositions on religious beliefs. And I'll be honest, I'm not up to date on my Loi 96 and the other ones. Embarrassingly, I'm not up to date on that. But regardless, you got to just follow the law. And if you don't like it, sure, change it. But that's my thought.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and apologies for all of the technical issues, but we appreciate you staying with us. If you want to keep up to date with future episodes, please follow Local 514 on YouTube and follow CUTV Montreal on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. See you next time.
It's too big.